Hello, my loves. Welcome back to a new episode of The Next Level Social Podcast. I am your host, Ayla. And as always, I'm so excited and grateful and honored to have you here for another episode of the show. And we have a very special guest joining us today. And in full transparency, this is actually the second time that we are recording this interview. I met with my girl, Natalie, who you are going to get to know very shortly. I interviewed her on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and sadly, the audio was completely corrupted. And so this is round two of us getting to have this conversation. But once you learn more about Natalie, you'll know she is a very intuitive, flowy, going human being, and everything for a reason. So maybe there's something that needed to be said in this conversation that was meant to be. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce Natalie, who is a dear friend, client, but more importantly, she is an amazing, incredible feminine embodiment mentor. She is an energy healer, an EFT practitioner. She's a teacher. She's an intuitive guide. And she's also, the most important role in her life, a mom of two. And she is truly a seeker of knowledge and wisdom, and she's an ever-evolving soul. Her purest passion is, of course, to help others connect deeply within, to find meaning and expansion through their daily experiences and interactions, and to remember their wholeness and divine essence. Her work offers a safe and supportive space to be witnessed, a grounded and practical approach to deep, very deep inner inquiry and expansion, and a healthy measure of relatability and vulnerability. Of course, once you get to know her, adding a little humor and humanness to keep it light is her vibe. I am so grateful and excited to introduce my girl, Natalie. Natalie, welcome to the show. Again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. What a welcome. Wow. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And I mean, it's true. Everything that you have, I mean, obviously that was your bio from your website that I just read out, but everything is so true. And after working with you over the last couple of months, that is you, and you're so magical inside and out, and you have such a gift. I've learned so much from you over the last 5 weeks, and I'm excited to dive into all of that because your work is so special, and it's so needed right now. And there's we're going to dive into all of the femininity and the masculinity because these are what do they call it? Hot topics, trending topics right now in the world. But okay, so obviously I just read your bio, but I would love to, in your words, tell us a little bit about you, your story. I know you came from corporate, which led you to burnout. And I know that you and I have a lot of relatability there. And I know a lot of my listeners do too. So how'd you get started? What led you to stepping into this power and into this role to where you are now? To give us a little bit of the background story.
Give us the consolidated version. Yeah. Okay. Well, rewind years and years. I, right out of high school, was like, I want to be an accountant. Like, who really says that?
Which
I don't
is
know.
also knowing you now, so strange to me.
It's like a different life, a different world.
I was the same. My dad's business degree.
Yeah. I was like, I liked accounting somehow within high school. So I went to Simon Fraser University. I got my business degree. I started working for one of the big four public accounting firms in downtown Vancouver. Yes. Did my CPA CA, was working in audit, public accounting. But it was actually in university that I started having all of these symptoms where I would start having fevers, like high fevers for weeks on end, to the point where it was like, okay, this is not a flu. So it was like doctors and oncologists and, rheumatologists, all sorts of different doctors and specialists to figure out.
All
the gists. Exactly. Yeah. Too many gists. And I wasn't catching the gist at that time, clearly, but right. Yeah. And so anyways, I ended up being diagnosed with an autoimmune condition very similar to like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, but it's called Still's disease. Okay. So keep that in mind. continued throughout university. And, I've had bouts of like hospitalization with meningitis and pericarditis, inflammation of my heart, like big, big things. And somehow I was just so resilient that it didn't shake me. Like I continued going, I went to school with an IV port in my hand.
Stop.
Like that is the
Never
level
do that.
of, what do you call that? Like grit, dedication / also delusion.
Well, I mean, I feel like we're going to unpeel the layers on this, but that's living in a society that's wrapped around the masculine energy,
Yep.
which we're
Yep.
going to dive into. But
Yeah.
yes, okay,
I
continue.
couldn't slow down. It was like,
Couldn't
I
slow
need to
down.
keep going. And
Yeah.
so, just my body was giving me big messages that there was something going on internally, but I didn't have the tools to understand what I know now. And so I had started out doing like naturopathy and like
Mhm.
holistic medicine, which did help. But it wasn't until I had the biggest flare up of all in 2020, where I was in the hospital for over 2 weeks, borderline ICU, like blood transfusions, the whole shebang. And I was scared of essentially losing my life. And that's where it shook me to my core. And I was like, help me heal. Like, I will do anything, help me heal. I will like be in service for the rest of my life, essentially. And this is when a lot of things started coming into my life that were way outside of what I would have considered before. So energy healing wasn't even on my radar before. And I started to understand how the energy within and around us impacts not only how we feel within our physical bodies, but also the way that we process life and the decisions that we make, our subconscious, our beliefs, and how we can hold on to emotion. And so as I started delving into this myself, this is where I started not only experiencing like profound healing within my body, but also completely changing and realigning every part of my life. My hands started tingling, my third eye started tingling, and I had this
love it.
massive spiritual awakening, essentially, where I started perceiving things beyond the physical. So this is how I got into this work, is through first healing myself and my own life. And then it was just this natural transition that involved many layers to get into the space of serving others.
Yeah. Wow. I love your story so much. I've heard it a couple times now, but I love it so much because I relate to it so much. You and I have had many conversations, and I know that so many of my listeners, I mean, this is we'll get into this more, but this is this world that we live in, right? This male dominated 24-hour cyclical system that we as women who run on 28-day cycles and have, many different layers are kind of forced into, and it can lead to us, and especially in the entrepreneurial space. And if you are a self-led driven woman, accountant, it doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur, but accountants, nurses, doctors, like all of, these high achieving roles and positions in this world, it can lead to just such massive burnout. And very similar story happened to me, which I've talked about on the podcast. I've talked about you. I was in the exact same situation for the most part, with an unexplained diagnosis of vulvodynia, which is chronic vaginismus. My vagina was literally screaming to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the process of writing a book right now. And do you watch Sex and the City? Have you
Yeah.
ever watched Sex and
Oh,
the City?
yeah.
Okay, so Charlotte had vulvodynia.
What?
I know. I know it's actually random. She didn't have like what I had, but they talked about vulvodynia, and I'm in the process of writing my book right now. And there's literally going to be a chapter. I don't know what the chapter. It's going to be like my vagina was screaming to me, something like that. There is going
Yeah.
to be a chapter in the book because it was such a moment. It was like something is wrong. No doctor can explain it. It's not blood work. It's not urine. You don't have a freaking STD. You've been with one person your whole life. Like something is wrong. It was brought on by an onset of overdose of antibiotic, but it
Mm.
lasted for so long. And I know now, after, naturopaths, conversations with people like you, it was literally my body being like, you need to slow the F down and you're not living in alignment. And so then I
Yeah.
launched my coaching business, and the rest is history.
You know what? And good for you for sharing that, because I know it is a vulnerable share. But honestly, Ayla, that is why I was listening to your podcast and that created an instant connection with you. I was like, oh my God, she's
Right.
going to get me, because I don't want to be like operating out of my capacity anymore.
No.
And Still's disease, it literally was an inability to be still and slow down.
That's so, and that's so ironic, the name of it.
Yeah. And you know what? The number, I want to share something with you and with your listeners, because the acronym PAIN, like when we have pain within our body,
Hmm.
pay attention inside now.
That's funny.
It's like it's
It's not
getting our
funny.
attention
Yeah.
to, so our body's expressing something that we are not connecting to. And the number of women that I work with that have issues with their in their sacral region, so like endometriosis or
Mhm.
ovarian cysts, something like what you've experienced, oftentimes it's a rejection of our femininity when we
Mhm.
experience issues in and around our uterus, our ovarian, our female reproductive organs.
Yeah. Wild.
So
Wild, wild, wild.
yeah.
And I know, and I love that you came into my world, and we talked about this before, but that's just from like the business Ayla perspective. When you are creating your content, whether that be a podcast, a post on stories, a newsletter, when you can open up pieces that you're comfortable with that are uniquely you, that build relatability and connection, that's another way to call in your people. And so, like Natalie said, that's one of the reasons why she ended up working with me and she ended up doing my 5 week one-on-one intensive ignite. So I feel like that's a great way to segue into to us and a little
Mhm.
bit of what we've done over the last 5 weeks and talk about you and the growth and expansion you've done from the business side and fill my people in on what you have going on. So I would love to talk to you about working together and what that
Mhm.
experience has been like with you. How did you go kind of, I mean, you did kind of go balls to the wall, but it still felt like it was flowy, but
Yeah.
you got some massive results. And I would love for you to share what this experience of Ignite has been like for you, because I think it will inspire a lot of other people that are listening right now. So, how has that been working with me over the last 5 weeks? And talk to me a little bit about the growth you've done, both from the business side and the energetic side.
Yeah.
I would love to know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, Ayla, it's been absolutely incredible working with you. And I was just at this point where I was wanting to, I knew that I had this offering and I knew that I wanted to share these things. And I was, as you know, I can be a little bit lengthy in the way that I try to describe things
I
or
love it
come to
about you.
things, right? And so
Yeah.
you really helped me get clear on my message, on who exactly it was that I want to be serving
Yeah.
based on my own transformation,
Yeah.
and to speak to that woman and to flesh out these offers. You essentially held my hand and were like, you gave me this space of accountability and belief in myself.
Yeah.
You were like, hey, I've done this, I see this in you can do this based on what you embody. And you just held my hand, lit a fire under my butt. Like, Ignite is the perfect name for your program, because that's what it did. And you held me accountable to showing up. And I love the fact that we had this container that was 5 weeks, but there were weeks where it was like, okay, can we push this out a
Yeah.
week? Because so we held the container, but we also listened, and I listened to my body and what I needed. And you held me in that.
Yeah.
So
It's
it was a
important to
really
me.
good ebb and flow while also keeping that momentum and the intention and vision behind things. So it's just me showing up in a new way, and you gave me permission to be a bit more bold in the way that I'm showing up. And financially, as you know, as I've said, this is not the reason why I do this. Financial reasons, I'm not after the money. That is not my first goal. But as I've aligned my heart and my messaging and gotten more cleared up some of the ways that I might have been leaking energy or spinning my wheels before, I've had my highest earning month ever.
Crazy.
Over 5 figure month. And so I'm just in a state of awe and gratitude and like, wow.
I know.
So,
It's been so amazing to watch. I've spoken I tell everyone about Natalie, but Natalie and I have had so many conversations, and when I say like Natalie is a soul client of mine, like she is, whether or not we continue, well, I mean, I know our worlds will always be connected, but as much as she's saying, how much I've helped her and held her accountable, it goes both ways. When you find your people and when you're authentically showing up in your businesses and online, they will come to you. And
mhm.
Natalie was such a dream to work with as a mentor. She was self led, but also came to me when she felt called. I've seen some, clients and or some coaches on the online space saying, oh, my clients are never in Voxer because they're self-led. And I'm like, okay, cool, but maybe you're also not offering the space. There's being self-led, but then there's also utilizing the space that's provided. And my job, I'm charging thousands of dollars for my program. I want my clients Voxering me. That is why it's there. I want to have conversations, whether it's mindset junk, whether it's tactical and strategy. It's not like Natalie, was messaging being like, how do I change this, email header? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something really basic. She was asking me like, what is the pricing structure that you would recommend for this pitch? How do I structure this offer? Talk to me about messaging again. Let's get really clear. Like it was she was embodying the transformation that I was selling and also that she was, and with that came massive impact and massive results with her in a very short period of time. And let Natalie, if you're listening right now, be your inspiration that it's possible. When Natalie came to me, 2 months ago, she was hardly showing up on social media. We completely revamped her offer suite. She created almost 2 or 3 new offers from scratch that have now sold out, which I want you to talk about in a moment here.
Mhm.
She increased all of her pricing, changed her currency into the currency that made sense for her business. She's being offered, and with that, then people are now coming to her and offering her public speaking gigs. Like all of these things were just subtle shifts and adjustments that we made in her messaging, in her branding, in her content, in her offers that are created and have created massive results that are going to create even more massive impact. And I just can't wait to continue to watch your journey, because I know it's just the beginning, and I can't wait to see in 3 months and 6 months where you're at. I know where it's going to be because I just know when I know, but I'm just proud of you, and I'm proud of
Thank
the work
you.
that you've created. So I would tell the listeners also like what you've launched and created and what you have going on right now. I know there's a couple different things that I think
Yeah.
they would love to hear about.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, it was so funny because there were a number of now current clients who were like, "I didn't know what you did."
Right?
Were like, I thought like they didn't know what I did. And so the power in actually explaining what we do and in different ways as
Yes.
well, because different ways are going to speak to different people. And so just I've had a number of new one-on-one private clients come in. I've launched an offering called Expressed, which is
Mm.
like my offer baby, which is something that I think I am going to continue rerunning because it's so near and dear to my heart. Expressed is for the woman beneath the mother. I
Mm.
work a lot with women, but specifically a lot of the time with mothers, to really reconnect with themselves. We can get lost in the role of mother. We can get lost even in the role of like entrepreneur. So it's
Yeah.
like coming back to the self and, hey, what do I need? What do I desire? Beyond everything that everybody needs from me, or beyond what society says that I should desire, or what happiness or success are, and really coming back to your inherent worth and your expression for you
Mm.
as a feminine being, but also just for you, not for everybody else. And so it's really the woman, who I work with is primarily either women who are overly expressed in the light feminine, which
Mm.
we'll get into the light
Yes.
feminine, the dark feminine, and this full spectrum. But the overgiver, the
Mm.
overdoer, the people pleaser,
Mm.
because we as women can get so caught up in this hustle culture, right? And the needing to perform and the needing to do, and a lot of the time attaching our worth or our sense of lovability, to what we do, for others or what we achieve. And so it's women who are in this overgiving role or pleasing others. And I work a lot with integrating more of the dark feminine, the wild feminine, the free and full expressive range of your emotions, and the me too. What is it that I want? And connecting back to your sensuality, your sexuality, because that balances these two roles out and brings your energy back within. So Expressed is for the woman beneath the mother. I just launched last week. The group is sold out, but I will most likely be launching it again in another
Maybe
8
you have a
weeks.
wait list of some sort. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So we can leave information in the show notes for anyone listening. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And it's really it's really exploring like the mother line and the mother wound as well, because a lot of these patterns come from what we've observed or imprints we've taken on from our own mothers, in addition to culture and society, because our mothers were also shaped by what was going on societally. Yeah. So we've got Expressed. I also have an offer that is not a group offer, because Expressed is a group offer. It's called Transcend. And this is for the woman who is already established and successful within her business, within the financial world, but she is expressing maybe more hyper masculinity or kind of that overdoing, overachieving type of pattern. And that was really near and dear to
Us.
my journey.
Yeah.
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 That was
And
me.
it was me like literally seeking my worth and my love, chasing that outside of me in what I was doing. And so this is for the woman who wants to transcend these patterns of disconnecting from herself and placing her worth in what she does, in burning herself out, essentially, because she feels like how can I stop? And so it's really reconnecting with your feminine expression and redefining your worth over an 8-week container with me. So those are two of my bigger offers. And then I work one-on-one overtime with clients as well. And I've had all sorts of things come in since working with you: retreat facilitation, corporate wellness events, and yeah.
It's so amazing because like we said before, you're authentically showing up within your God-given power, and it's people, your people are going to find you. And if you're listening, you and I'm sure you're relating to even these offers. They're such beautiful programs. So I'll leave all the details in the show notes in the show notes below the episode, and I'll leave Natalie's website and her Instagram handle. Go and follow her, if nothing less, on social media, because she creates beautiful content and her work is so powerful. So I would love then just to segue into your work. If someone's listening right now and they're like, what the heck do you mean wounded femininity, light feminine, dark? Yeah, because it is, unless you're in the world, these terms, especially me 6 months ago, I had no idea. I just assumed femininity and masculinity to gender roles, truly, which, as we know, that is not the case. So let's segue into the basics of what do you mean by femininity and masculinity, as high level as you possibly can. I know we could talk about this for all day long, but
definitely. Yeah. And like you said, femininity and masculinity are not constrained to gender, to 3D gender. We all carry both of these energies and harness them in different ways. And so our masculine is the doing, the logical, the analytical, the mind energy, the linear, the direction, the containment, the discipline, the providing, the initiation. The feminine is the feeling instead of the doing, the being, the cyclical, the intuition, the flowing, the trust, the surrender. And so it's sort of a dance between these two energies on a daily basis for each of us. But when we carry wounding within our feminine, oftentimes we then carry wounding within our masculine, because there's an overcompensation or like a distortion that can occur, where we see patterns such as hyper masculinity and the needing to constantly do, achieve, initiate, perform, rather than the ability to just be and to be in connection with our body and our emotions and our intuition.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right? Like we can see someone be hyper feminized as well and kind of stuck in this cycle of all of the feelings and all of the, flowing without much structure or
Doing,
the
right,
ability to initiate. And I know a
right.
lot of women can see that in some of their partners as
Mhm.
well.
Oh, I
So,
know. It can show up in so many aspects, right? In friendships, in relationships with partners, and then of course in business, which is why we could have so many episodes. But go reach out to Natalie, and she'll teach you. But specifically around business, but even in relationships, I know I talked to you on the other podcast that we recorded. As I have been working with you, as I've been trying to learn more about femininity and masculinity and how it shows up and what that means, I've been trying little things, and I mentioned to you because I primarily operate in my masculine. I really do, but I have been trying to incorporate more of the feminine side to me, and when I do that, it's things just literally flow so much better. More I'm open to more receiving. My relationships, whether they're with my partner, I even shared an example with my brother, whom I, work and spend so much time with. And I so often want to just take care of everything and do everything for everyone. And I feel like that's a good thing. But I realize then it causes a lot of resentment because it doesn't allow for others to have space to lead and to step into their masculine. And so I gave the example I shared with you how a couple weeks ago I went to a restaurant with my brother, and it was something little, but it was something big for me. And we went into the restaurant, and normally I would lead, I'd open the door, I would go straight to the hostess, and I table for two, da 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 da, and be on my way because he is my younger brother, first of all. And so naturally I always want to take care of him since he's been born. He's been like my baby brother. But I also was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna step back. And it was ridiculous how challenging it was for me. But I'm like, I'm gonna step back. And I let him open the door for me. I let him go and talk to the hostess and get our table. And then I let him lead me to the table, pick the table. Normally I'm like, actually, can we do this booth? And like get all like in there and start integrating and dominating. And I could see him being also surprised. He had no idea that I was doing this or like thinking any of this in my brain, but I literally saw physically like his chest kind of like being like, oh, I'm leading. Oh, I'm taking charge. And it actually, I could tell it gave him this confidence, and like he wanted to almost protect me and take care of me, and he liked stepping into it, and I actually liked not having to fucking think and just let him do it. And it's a tiny example in relationship, but I've been, as I dive into it more and more, trying to incorporate it into business and to even how I work with my clients. So I would love, because I think it's important that we relay, and you relay, and you did, that there's important to have both to
yeah.
harmonize. So how can we, from the business side of things, because I know everyone listens, use both the masculine and feminine energies to enhance creativity and harmonize how we are showing up in our businesses to, be our best in both ways? What are some tips and tools that you can
Great,
provide?
great question. Yeah. And within business, like I like to think of the masculine as like the container, like the
Container.
vision or like the purpose of the meeting, like setting a bit of structure, the systems that we have in place, right?
Right.
Whereas the feminine is the flowing within those structures. And
Mhm.
so I find that when we create, depending on maybe we're having a meeting, right? And we have like a general purpose or intention or a bit of like a few points that we want to hit in terms of structure, allowing spaciousness then to flow within that container. So
Mm.
having some space and a little bit more time to actually flow and feel into and allow like inspiration to come in. Like creating more movement. So for me, for example, I will be like, okay, there's this thing that I want to do, or there's this thing that I want to launch, and I have a general idea of what I want to do.
Mhm.
Sometimes I need to actually take a step back and go for a walk outside in nature,
Mm.
or have a dance, or really get the energy flowing within me, like movement. The feminine is flowing, she wants to move. And so if we are stagnant, if we are sitting there and trying to force, it's very difficult to flow.
Mm.
So creating the structure, creating the goal, the vision, but also knowing that there are things that you can do that are even unrelated to business that can get you in the flow, in the inspiration. And that's when I receive the insights and these ahas, or these, oh my gosh, for the woman beneath the mother, came through to me like in the shower.
Yeah.
So it's when we're sitting there trying to force, sometimes that doesn't leave room for the feminine to flow. So it's this delicate balance, and seeing these two different aspects and learning what you need to feel safe flowing, and when you can let your guard down and get out of that, that striving ahead
Hyper
energy.
masculine. Yeah.
That's when a lot of that feminine can flow. And there's so much beauty in it, because it really allows us to connect back to our hearts and the impact that we want to be making. That is the feminine, right? And our intuition is going to allow us to be able to say things, or speak to people, or speak to things, or come up with things that would not even be possible if we were sitting there trying to figure it out with our minds.
Right.
So it's, how can I get into my body? How can I create space for my employees to get into their bodies, and to actually be able to flow within the constraints of the container, the structure that we have.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned intuition, and I know we've talked before around the senses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge part of leaning into our femininity if you're hyper masculine like I have been. And so some little things that I've been trying to do, again, all of them are small, but they're big for me. Instead, I have eucalyptus hanging in my shower. So now when I'm showering, I treat it more of like a ritual and a spa, instead of just like shampoo, shave, wash my face, get out, da 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 da. I'm like, no. Like, I want to enjoy this time for me, this 15 minutes that I have for myself to connect to my body, to, actually pay attention to like the soap and the warm water and things like that. Same as like, instead of waking up first thing in the morning and just drinking a coffee and opening my laptop, which I did for decades, or a decade. I'm not going to age myself here, but for a decade, that is literally, I would have a fast ass workout, and then I would have a coffee and open my laptop and just grind for 12, 13 hours. Now, I don't even open my laptop. The earliest I will open my laptop or take a meeting is 10 a.m. Before that, it's gratitude journaling, it's meditating, it's doing a workout that feels good for me, whether that's yoga, Pilates, whether that is in high intensity interval training or a weightlifting training, whatever I feel like. And I've also, in the same breath, been trying to cycle sync and really lean into my menstrual cycle and my time of the month, because I notice such a difference in how I'm feeling energetically from a working out and eating perspective.
Oh,
And so
yes.
it's just being intentional. And if you're listening to this and you have been primarily like go, 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 it's these little things that I've been doing that actually do make big results. Not being on social media for weekends. Like, I haven't been on social media on a Saturday and Sunday in, I want to say, 2 or 3 months. No, maybe not that long. Maybe 2 months. And this used to be such a scary thought for me, because I am so used to being on, constantly going. But I'm telling you, when I make space to actually turn my brain off, disconnect, I end up reconnecting not just to myself, but those around me, and sales come in. I wake up almost every Monday morning to, if not sales, for sure leads inquiring about my offers. And I swear, whether it's true or not, but I believe it's because I am creating space for people to come in, because I'm living more in alignment with my femininity and my masculinity in a way that is starting to feel more flowy. So those are just a couple of things that I've been trying to do to help a sister out.
And that's huge, because you're creating space to receive. You're balancing the energies of giving outward and giving inward, right? And it takes a certain amount of bringing your own self, your own patterns into your awareness. And I would imagine you've started doing some work around these things, because otherwise nothing changes if nothing changes, right? We have to really catch ourselves and unpack why we operate the way we operate, right?
Yeah. Why do you think, like, I guess my last question for you would be, I mean, this is probably a humongous question, so answer to the best of your ability in the time that we have, but why do you think our society is so imbalanced? Do you think it's a society thing, a culture thing, a parent thing, a generational thing, all of the above? What do you think is the reasoning, and why do you think it can be especially so hard for women to be in their feminine energy, especially female entrepreneurs, who I know is primarily who's listening right now?
Yeah, that is such a loaded question. But it goes back, like you could go way back. You could get really woo-woo and go back to like the days of like the witch trials and like when women were really in their power. And
Mm,
we as a society, I think, have just created these structures to try to be more efficient with the Industrial Revolution and
mm,
the designing of institutions. But a lot of these institutions and structures were designed by men for men without the connection to the heart or without the cyclical nature of women in mind. And so I think as women, when we are trying to operate in these structures and within this culture, it just doesn't lend well to the way that we naturally operate. We do flow, we do have cycles, we do need more connection with our bodies and ourselves in order to operate, with the most impact. And so, yeah, it is such a loaded question. And it really comes down to childhood as well, and
mm.
where we learn to place our value, how we learn to fit in and belong, and what we need to do to be valuable and worthy and enough, and how we received validation from our parents,
Right.
right?
It all comes back to the childhood.
All the childhood, right?
Yeah.
Which is impacted by culture and society. Like our parents, they have these imprints too of like, I need my son or daughter to go to university and get these, because that's their own messaging, their own imprints, their own wounding. And
Yeah.
so somewhere along the line, someone comes in and they're like, I'm going to start asking questions and do things differently,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And that makes so much sense. And I know I've shared with you before as well. And when it comes to the childhood and I think about and I reflect on my own, I know exactly where it comes from, right? My mom was so in her femininity. She was she stayed at home with us for almost our entire lives. And my dad was the sole breadwinner and he controlled all the finances, made all the decisions. He was so hyper masculine. And it made my mom, as much as she loved to be able to like cook and clean and go with the flow, she wasn't able to make any decisions and she had no power over her own life, specifically her finances. And so she like drilled in my brain, never allow a man, never to be dependent on anyone, never be dependent on a man, never allow anyone to have control over your money. You get a degree and you be a boss. That's literally what she told me because she was so afraid that I would be like her and be unbalanced, right? Whereas
mhm,
I'm sure looking back now, if we had these conversations, it would have been like, yes, like be in control of your own money, make money, but also it's okay for someone to step in and to protect you and to
mhm,
also make money and to also allow you to feel safe and secure and provided for. There can be an ebb
yes,
and a flow. It doesn't
yeah,
have to be so polarized. So I think that for me, I can see it so clearly. And that's the first step to all of this therapy. The work that you do is just understanding where your patterns come from. And the cool thing about patterns is that they can change. So if you're
mm.
listening to this right now and you're like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming, just reach out to Natalie. She's a goddess and will help you with all of this. But the cool thing is we can change it for ourselves, we can change it for our children and our children's children, and it's all personal development and just trying to be better and our most optimal selves in this one beautiful life that we have. So
Mm. And
that's
we're in
why
the
I
driver's seat. We are not our
right.
patterns. We are not our emotions, our thoughts. Like we are in the driver's seat. And especially as women, we create life. We birth humans.
Yeah.
We have so much power. Like we could go on and on, but we have a time limit. But we are powerful. And when you can remember that power and remember that you're in the driver's seat, you get to choose based on what you desire, what your life looks like, things will things will completely shift and
Things will
realign
come and
for you.
and
Yeah.
you will be able to receive, and
Yeah.
it's important to be able to receive, is it not? It's
Oh,
important to be
yeah.
able to receive pleasure and all of the different things in life, right? Like,
Right, right.
right?
Yes.
It's important.
Yes. No, like and pleasure and your relationship with pleasure and your ability to receive and to incorporate pleasure into your day, it's huge because it really
Yeah.
comes back to your ability, your capacity to receive and how deserving you feel for that and how safe you feel within your body. Because we hold all these patterns and these emotions that might have we haven't known what to do with them at the time. So we hold them within. And so when we are holding a lot from our past, it sometimes doesn't feel so safe to be in our bodies and to be able to slow down and receive. And so it's unpacking all of these moving pieces, which I know I, for one, could not do by myself. I have worked with countless healers and mentors and therapists, and it's the investment in self, whether it comes down to your healing, whether it comes down to a mentor within your business. You are actually declaring your worth and your intention on moving towards something through this financial investment. Like finances, money is just a medium. It's just currency. It's just energy. So when you make that declaration in yourself, you say, hey, I'm worthy of this. I am dedicating my energy through these finances to this. And it is so powerful because it is a declaration you're making to yourself, to the universe. Like, it's huge.
So
So
huge.
yeah.
I love that. And and I mean, we do all the money mindset work in my world on this podcast, and all of it is work. Like Natalie said, it's, time, it's energy, it's finances, but you are your most valuable assets, and it's always worth it. So if you're listening to this episode right now, whether you want to, go all in on your business and do what Natalie did and skyrocket results and impact, or you're like, actually, and I actually want to do both. I want to get more clear on who I am and where my patterns and what this feminine and masculine stuff is, and how I can lean into the divine on both ends instead of the wounded. Look at me, no one terms. And what that even means, because that's a whole other can of worms to unpack, and how it can show up in friendships, especially. Oh, I've been seeing it with women lately. My God, we could
My gosh.
be
Yes.
our best freaking assets, but we can also be our worst enemies. And that comes from a wounded place, right? That,
Yeah.
again, we could unpack, but there's so much to dive into. So again, I cannot praise Natalie enough and her work. And so I will leave all the links to her and where you can find her and learn more about what she has to offer if you are picking up any piece that we've been throwing down in this episode. Natalie, I'm so grateful that you were here for the second time recording this episode, but I feel like it was just as good, if not even better. And there was a reason, if nothing more than me just to be in your energy again.
Oh,
Lights me up. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so proud of you. I have loved watching you grow and flourish over the last couple of months. It's just the beginning. And I'm thankful that you shared today and your time and your energy with my community. So thank you for that.
thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for you, Ayla. So thank you.
You're welcome. You guys, if you liked this episode today or you found any golden nuggets of value in it, please take a screenshot and tag myself and Natalie in the stories. Tag us. We love to see who's listening. We love having conversations. We'd love to chat. If you have any questions about any of this, reach out to myself or Natalie. I hope you have the most beautiful day, and I will see you next week. Bye, my loves.